and welcome back to the Irish Hunting Podcast, the number one place for your hunting, fishing and country sports stories from around the world. Stick on the kettle, crack open a beer, pull up the feet, relax and enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Irish Hunting Podcast, episode number 98, A Plant-Based Past with Kristeva Dowling. Kristeva, with a Masters in Social Anthropology, discusses how she ditched a vegan lifestyle to turn towards a more traditional and ancient way of living, taught herself how to hunt, became an award-winning mead maker and author. She's an all-round powerhouse. Enjoy this one, folks.
There we go.
And finally, Kristeva Dowling, very welcome to the Irish Hunting Podcast. Thanks a million for joining us.
Oh man, thanks for having me. So it's a pleasure.
This is really cool. Myself and Robert were just talking during the week. We follow your page obviously with great enthusiasm. I'm a big fan of your homemade mead. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, I used to make my own wine many moons ago, and all different brews and concoctions, not near as good as yours or as professional, but yeah, it's very, very interesting. So you've that's the what would you say, the real throwback to the original wine, isn't it? The mead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Mead is the oldest alcohol known to man.
Known to man, yeah. And we're slight fans of that, aren't we, Robert?
I'll have a tipple every now and again. Yeah. and do you ship all the way around the world, or do you just stay in the States?
I can. As long as your country allows it to come in, then yes, I can.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, we will have to
place an order.
Yes.
Yes, do.
So,
what
Kristeva,
would you recommend, Kristeva?
From my mead?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that my main goal with the mead is to capture the taste of Alberta in every bottle. So everything that grows wild in nature is what sort of drives my recipes. So for you folks, you probably don't know what Saskatoon berries are.
No.
So that would be one, because they grow wild here. My berries borealis is a mixture of all the fruits that grow wild in Alberta. So it's got Saskatoon, Haskap, blueberry, blackberry, strawberry. And then I do ones. Dandelion is probably my most awarded mead.
Okay.
And then I actually just released what's it called? Rocky Mountain Maple. So very Canadian.
Very
maple
good.
syrup. It's made with maple syrup and honey.
So the dandelion one, that's because that's kind of like, that'll be a healthy alcohol, wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's cleaning your liver while you drink.
Yeah,
Like
you see where I'm going with this.
So actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. So each mead, depending on what it's made from, so like a straight mead that just has honey is called the traditional. But once you add herbs or spices, it's called the metheglin, which is from the Old English word medicine.
Very good.
So the dandelion is a metheglin. And that's historically their recipes were built for medicinal value.
Okay.
Hence the word metheglin.
I'm telling you, if you set up a shop over here, you're going to clean up.
It would be fun.
I suppose you've a hugely interesting story, Kristeva. So, like, I suppose, tell us about your formative years. How, where you grew up, your childhood and stuff like that. Interest and so on like that growing up, because that's going to, I suppose, lead into the middle part of your life and so on. So take us back a little bit. Where did you grow up, and talk a little bit about your upbringing, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I was born in Vancouver, mostly raised just on the outskirts in a little town called Coquitlam, which has now been engulfed by the greater Vancouver area. So grew up in the city, but like the first time that my dad took me to a farm, one of the guys that he worked with lived out in Langley, which at the time was very rural from Vancouver, about an hour out. And like I saw the farm I saw the cows, I saw the big red barn and the hayloft, and I just was smitten. And I think I probably pestered my dad all the way home. Please, Daddy, can we have a farm? Please, Daddy. And he was like, not in your life. So I left home young, and I left Vancouver area right away. And I was teaching, actually taught scuba diving all over the province of British Columbia and Alberta for 6 years. And so very out in all the rural and remote towns and small lakes and so forth. So I think the whole farming pioneer desire is just somehow in my DNA. I don't know why. 'Cause my family looks at me like, where on earth did you come from? Because they're still all in the city. They're very, like, I'm like 180 degrees from the rest of them. And then I moved to New Zealand, and I did my master's degree down there and lived very rurally. And that's where I met Tony the Greek. He was a neighbor, like in a rural area. I bought 3 acres, and he taught me about growing food, and he gave me my first little chicken starter kit, which was like 2 hens and a rooster. And I learned a ton from him. Every time I went to his place, like, he was making brandy. He was doing olives. Like, the first time I'd ever harvested olives was at Tony the Greek's. And then he made his own olives, and he made his own cheese. And it just like inspired me so much to have met him. And it gets, I think, I don't know what it's like over there, but the public health and kind of the fear mongering around food safety and so forth made me scared to try doing that sort of stuff. Like, oh my gosh, I might kill myself. I might poison myself, something like that. So then to meet somebody who's doing all those things and eating his things and not dying, it made it accessible, and it made it real, and it made it like, hey, we can actually do that. And I did my master's degree in anthropology, social anthropology down there. So I kind of learned human evolution and history, and how really, when you think about all of our ancestors, we all were carnivore primarily. People have this fantasy that, oh, we were hunter-gatherer. It's not a fantasy. The fantasy piece of hunter-gatherers, yes, we were hunter-gatherers, but we weren't collecting vegetables that we know today. We were like eating shoots and leaves, and primarily a large ruminant beef, not beef, but a large ruminant meat was our primary source of fat and protein. So I went through that whole trajectory, then came back to Canada, and then I got a job in a hospital, and then pretty soon I stayed there for 6 years. And that's when I wrote my book. So I met a man, Clarence, bless his heart, and RIP, he's now passed, but he was a World War II vet from America, and he'd brought his sons, his 7 children, up to Bella Coola because he wanted to keep them out of the draft. He was very anti-war. Even when he was in the war, he actually asked to be part of the medical corps because he didn't want to kill anybody. Anyway, he became the cougar hunter. So in the village that I lived in, it's called Bella Coola, there is a high number of large predators like grizzly bears, black bears, cougars, and the cougars sort of started becoming a problem. So anyway, I went to him when I decided I wanted to learn to hunt, because I thought, who better? This man who, really hunts. That whole family sort of lived like a pack of wolves. And I say that with great reverence for them. It's not a dismissal or anything. They worked together. They gardened together. They harvested together. They hunted together, or did, like, the men did the hunt, but the women did all the canning and the processing and all that sort of stuff. And then they spread it out among themselves. So when I decided I wanted to write the book, I went to Clarence and I said, would you please teach me to hunt? And oh my gosh, the smile on his face, he reached out his hand. He's like, my dear, I would love to teach you how to get your first moose. And I'm thinking, prairie chicken.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
didn't think I wanted to hunt a moose. I was thinking, I just want to know I can shoot something. So I was
Prepare it
thinking,
and eat it. Yeah.
yes, that's it. So anyway, and then when I said that, the look of disgust on his face, I felt about this big because he said, that's not gonna feed you. Like
Yeah.
if you're gonna learn to hunt, you're gonna learn to hunt
Yeah.
something that's gonna get you through the winter.
And if you can
So
hunt a moose, you can pretty much hunt the rest of them. Then after that, you're self-sustainable. Then after that.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you learn so much when you're hunting a moose, but you get one moose and you feed a family and a half
Yeah.
or two for a winter. That's you
And
suddenly have 1,500 pounds of meat in the
of
freezer, and
good
that's
meat.
deboned.
Yeah. And you're just going back a small bit there. You said about, like, obviously there's all kinds of influx now of information, whether or not we were carnivore, omnivore, or vegetarian, all this kind of, and there's a lot of, depending on what day you go on Google and stuff, there's all kinds of information flying around. It's my take on it. I want to get yours. Obviously, you're far more informed and educated than I, but would I be correct in saying that research would uh, suggest that we predominantly used, we foraged or we foraged as we hunted. So in other words, we use berries and wild herbs and vegetables and so on. Obviously not as we use them now, but back in the day while we hunted our large game. Would that be correct?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Discover the Ryan Pyle podcast, hosted by acclaimed adventure television personality Ryan Pyle. Launched in April 2020, this engaging series blends insightful discussions on current events with exclusive interviews featuring prominent figures in adventure, travel, sports, filmmaking, music, and entertainment. Join Ryan bi-weekly for compelling stories and profound perspectives that inspire and inform. Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Subscribe now and embark on a journey of discovery with the Ryan Pyle Podcast.
Yes, except for coming through the ice age. Of course, when we came through the ice age, there was no flora anymore. And the anthropological evidence actually shows that humans didn't run away from the ice age. We ran onto the ice. So we ran onto the ice chasing the big game, knowing that is really, vegetables are not going to sustain you. We need access to fat, high dense caloric food to get you through a winter.
Okay.
And we need this is another misconception. Our people think that we're primarily carbohydrate burners, and we're not. We're actually ketogenic fat burners. Like even a baby, when it's brand new born, it's in a state of ketogenesis. And when you breastfeed, it maintains that state of ketogenesis. And that's actually what our brains are made to, the energy source, and they function the best when they're in a state of ketosis. Our ketones are what actually feeds our brains better than carbohydrates. Yes, if you start eating carbs and they're there, they go into your bloodstream. Your blood can only hold 4 to 5 grams of carbs, and then some in your liver and some into your muscles. But after that, and that's only about 20,000 calories worth, which is why long distance runners and so forth need to keep eating glucose packs and all those things while they're running, because they're primarily carb burners and they run out, and they call it hitting the wall. They're hitting the wall because their body then has used up. You've only got 90 minutes of carbohydrate energy in your body at any one time. Whereas if you are a fat burner, if you're a it's in a state of ketosis, you have over 100,000 calories worth.
Okay.
Is that the type of diet? Is that the type of diet that you use?
I don't like to call it a diet, because it's really the way we should be living. It's a way of life. Yeah. No, and there was a fella from Australia actually who went to prove this fact. And from Monday to Friday, he did a marathon every day in a fasted ketogenic state. So he didn't eat for those 5 days, and he ran 26 miles. What is a marathon? 26 miles, I think. every day. And he wasn't a long distance runner to start with.
And it's interesting because that like yesterday I've been, as you probably see, I'm not exactly the slimmest person in the world, but I try to maintain some kind of semblance so I can, hunt relatively easily in the when the season comes around. But so like take for instance yesterday, I try and fast, so and then but the problem is I love pastas, I love breads, and I love making my own breads and so on. And so I made focaccia yesterday, and of course as it come out of the oven, you start to. But when I eat like those type of carbohydrates, the pastas and the breads and so on, then I tend to want to go to sleep. I don't want to get up and, whereas when I eat meat, and I'm not, this is just me. I don't know whether this happens, but when I eat meat, I don't get that. I get I'm far more likely to be active after I eat meat rather than when I eat breads and stuff. I tend to want to pan out. Is that what relating to what you're saying there is or am I getting that? Is that just me?
No, that's 100%. I mean, they talk about, it's like people joke about, oh, I've got my diabetic coma now because I've got so much glucose in the bloodstream. And when you eat carbs, like when you think about it, so if your body can only handle 4 grams of carbs, 4 grams of carbs is 4 radishes.
Wow. Yeah.
4 grams of carbs is 1 square of 95% Lindt chocolate. So when you have a pasta dinner and who doesn't have their spaghetti with garlic bread?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you've probably taken in 150 to 200 grams of carbs. Your body can only handle 4 grams in your bloodstream, a little bit more in your liver. Your muscles are probably already full because you've never burnt it all off. That's the other piece that you never do, which is why the intermittent fasting is good, because it forces your body to at least burn off what's in your blood.
Yeah.
Anything over and above that once your muscles are full and your bloodstream's full and your liver's full, that's when you put on fat.
Yeah.
When did you get into this lifestyle, Kristeva? When did you actually change into this type of lifestyle? Were you always like this, or was there a particular time or incident that actually made you change to this type of lifestyle?
It was sort of a long, steady trajectory, really. So when I was younger, so that's partly what my book is about, is the trajectory, not only from city girl to sustainable farmer, but from vegetarian. I was vegetarian, I went vegan, and then I went the full circle to O. And so it started with, when I was younger, I just thought, oh, I love the animals, I don't want to hurt, probably a very typical person who was raised omnivore trajectory into vegan. Didn't want to, or wanted to save the animals, didn't want to hurt them. Then when you really start getting more educated about being vegetarian, you start realizing, especially in the industrial food production system, you realize that the land of dairy and eggs is really horrific, the way those animals are kept, etc. So that drove me to being a vegan. And then I was probably vegan for about 4 years. And at that time I had started my education. And so 2 things culminated at the same time. One, I ended up becoming dangerously low in B12. And what happens when you get dangerously low in B12 is your myelin sheath of your axons starts demyelinating. So you start getting nerve problems and it mimics MS. So the doctor said, okay, you've got 2 choices. Go back and start eating meat, or come in for weekly B12 shots. And I thought, well, weekly B12 shots, obviously that's not sustainable. Like, clearly we are not meant to be vegan if you have to highly supplement yourself.
And that's the thing, so I have no issue, 0 issue with anyone being either vegetarian or vegan. Or the problem I do have, because you're not the first person I've talked to about this and who has experienced issues with that particular style of living, So why is it being driven so hard? It reminds me of kind of like the push for the cereals back in the 80s or 70s, 80s, and the sugar. It's kind of like, oh, this is, eat your cereal in the morning, it's good for you. And then there's a picture of the wheat grain, and it reminds me so much of that, where it's obviously there's money. There must be huge money, because if you look at any of the big vegan follower pages, they have, huge followings from out of nowhere, and they've huge advertisement campaigns and so on. So is it money driven, or is it really or is it ecological? Like, is there a goodness behind any of it, or is it just a money driven, in your opinion?
It's, I think, from the bottom up, as in the people who are wanting and going vegan the way I did. I think they have it's a very altruistic idea, albeit a naive one.
Yeah.
Because, for one, let's just back up a bit. No society ever in the history of humanity has ever been vegan. Vegetarian, yes, but they've still relied on animal products, be it their meat or milk or eggs, to survive. That has existed, but no society has ever been vegan. Veganism is really something that has come along with the advent of the Industrial Revolution, where you can actually manufacture the chemical supplements so that you can actually survive, because you cannot survive on a vegan diet. We need animal products, end of story. You can't get B12 from anything other than an animal product. And there's like heme iron is another one that, yes, you can get iron, but it's not exactly bioavailable the way it is from an animal product. So there's that. And I think you're spot on in terms of farming. Look who's taken over. It's corporate agriculture now. It's industrial agriculture now. And it's more or less the ruling class who owns all of that. So they need and want to make money. You can't do much with meat or cheese to do a quote unquote added value, like milk into cheese. Yes, but grains, you can make it into bread. You can make it into pancakes. You can make it into crackers, cheese, chips, all of the stuff, granola bars, everything. So there's major money to be made in the world of grain farming.
And just, it's after coming in, like, obviously with meat products, they have a shelf life, a very quick shelf life, before whereas with the chemically produced material we're talking about, obviously you're elongating that, so you can transport it around the world. You can feed the masses with it for longer, so obviously then it's more profitable for the big industries, the corporates and so on. Absolutely.
Profitable, and the shelf life is a big one. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and I forget who it was, but anyway, it's one of these medical researchers in the carnivore world, and he bought a Twinkie 10 years ago, and it still looks like it did 10 years ago. And we're eating that as if it's food. Like, honestly, half of the stuff in the grocery store shouldn't even be considered food. It's not. It's a chemical conglomeration of food-like product.
Funny enough, right before we came on here, I was talking to actually my sisters and my sister-in-laws and stuff. We were just chatting, and we're actually talking about dinner and stuff. And we were just saying, like, how the disconnect between food, like they kind of, they were slagging me a little bit in terms of, because our family eats, predominantly game, as and it's we try not to waste any food, so we that kind of stuff, live a kind of as best we can, sustainable lifestyle. And I'd have a big thing of, for instance, if we eat a chicken, we try and make use of the whole carcass, the stock, and so on. And I believe that's, it's that to me is taking care of the animal, because it's I don't have to eat three of them, for three different meals. I can make three different meals out of one of them, so you're using it to the best of your ability. So, but they were saying, they were joking, oh sure, you guys are never sick, sure, it's because of all the, and they were throwing their eyes up to heaven, the mad stuff you eat, and I'm saying that's the kind of disconnect I think that has, they look at wild game now as almost foreign object you shouldn't, whereas that's what we should be eating in my mind. Do you know what I'm trying to get at? It's like, as if we're so far disconnected now from the food chain that they see wild animals as not part of a healthy, balanced lifestyle. Whereas it
That's
probably
not
should
a
be.
food source. They don't see it
Exactly.
as a food source unless it comes out of a shopping center wrapped in plastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is so strange, so strange.
Two things to add to that. First of all, the on the shelf wrapped in plastic, I think a lot of people don't even associate that with an animal that used to be standing on four legs walking around.
Yeah.
There's one. And the second thing is, I think Walt Disney has a lot to answer for in terms
Absolutely.
of
Bambi.
in the forest and call it Bambi.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I, after I wrote my book and I'd gone on the hunting trip, and I write about the moose hunting trip in my book, and then I'm down visiting my family in Vancouver, went to neighbors for dinner, and there we are eating ribs. And over this, steak and rib dinner, somebody says, "You're not really going to eat Bambi, are you?"
Yeah.
I'm sorry, do you not see the irony coming out of your mouth as you're eating off a piece of rib? Like, what's the difference between Bambi and the industrial raised feedlot cow that you're eating right now? So people have a massive disconnect. And honestly, back to your earlier question of how I actually got here. So it brings me back to why I wrote the book. I wanted to be 100% in touch with my food. I wanted to cut out the middleman. I don't want my money supporting the industrial agriculture complex. So I started raising my own food, and that's when I learned to hunt. And that's when I really got back to more of an ancestral diet. But like you, Anthony, I absolutely love making bread and that stuff too. I've largely taken it out of my diet. But every now and then I do actually still use it, but I buy an ancient grain, so red fife. And then I do the long, slow, it basically takes me 48 hours to make my bread because I do the proof first and so on and so forth. So by the time that you're making a sourdough like that, a lot of the carbohydrates have been used up by the actual yeast in the bread. So,
and that's interesting.
I talk myself into it is healthier.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very infrequent thing that I do now rather than a daily thing.
Just talk us just that particular point, because I know Rob is I think are you starting your sourdough journey shortly, Robert?
Yeah, I am. I make all different types of bread, but sourdough is the one that keeps on catching me. Just with the starter, I can't seem to keep the starter alive.
Oh, what are you doing? Why not?
I don't know.
What do you do?
I reckon he forgets about it, Robert. That's probably what you do. Yeah,
there is a little bit of that, and then I don't feed it.
Yeah. Well, and if you're not keeping it active, then feed it, get it bubbly and going, and then put it in the fridge.
Yeah. I will. It's my own fault. I'm just not proactive enough. I don't be minding it. I'm busy trying to do lots of other things as well. But I have a question for you. Since you changed to this lifestyle, have you noticed any physical benefits? Have you noticed any, bar the B12 shots, not having to get them? Have you noticed anything else? Increase in energy, anything?
Oh, yes, 100%. Actually, so the other thing that I've cured my own rosacea, which the doctor said, I kept going because like my whole life I've had perfect, like beautiful skin. Even when I was a hormonal teenager, I might get like one little pimple. But all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, I was like full on, it looked like cystic acne on my face. And I was reacting to things in the food system like maltodextrin. And it took me 7 years to figure out that it was maltodextrin. And anyway, so I kept going to the doctor and she's like, it's just rosacea. You'll just have to learn to manage it and figure out what foods are, making it flare. And I thought that can't be right. Like it's got to be linked to my gut. So then I went on this long journey and how I discovered the maltodextrin was I did a 5-day water fast. And at the end of the 5 days, when I broke my fast, I used an organic chicken bouillon and one sip and my face started flaring so it's a histamine reaction. And so I looked on the ingredients because I thought, what on earth is causing this? It's an organic chicken bouillon. Anyway, organic this, organic that, blah, blah, blah. And then this word maltodextrin. So then I did a deep dive into that. What is it? So on and so forth. It causes a lot of people a lot of problems and it's in nearly everything. So yeah, that I've cured that which the doctor, and she sent me to skin specialist and an allergist and, like on. And I tried quitting this and quitting that. And nope, it's not curable. Just live with it. So anyway, that's gone. The other really more remarkable in terms of health. So this might be TMI, but I had years ago, it was 2013, I had a mammogram and there were suspicious lumps on my left breast. And so then that kicked off a cycle of, now I need a punch biopsy. I need to have ultrasound. I need to have an MRI. I need to have all these things. And it needs to be every year. And then they even upped it to every 6 months at one point. And then finally I got fed up and I didn't go for years. And then last February, one of my girlfriends, she convinced, she sort of fear mongered me. You really should, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I went, they still had them. And then so that was February of last year, I still had the lumps. I refused all the other, I'm like, no, I'm not going for the punch biopsy again and so forth. But May 15th, I quit sugar and I went back to all forms of it. So that's when I really first I quit sugar. And then I think by mid-June, I was almost carnivore, except for fermented foods. I make my own sauerkraut and kimchi. So I eat a little bit of that plus the meat. I went for my follow-up in November and they couldn't find it.
Well, very good.
Everything is gone after 13 years.
That's fascinating. And was it tough, the sugar, giving it up?
I think so. Yeah.
Did you have any withdrawals? Any?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 100%. Oh yeah. I am an addict. I am a carb addict. Most of us are. Oh yeah. The first 5 days you might as well, I've never been a heroin addict, but you're jonesing for it. Jonesing. Yeah. So I suggest if you want to do the 5, or you want to break your sugar addiction, take a holiday, or, at least not have to be around people that you love, because you become really grumpy and hangry and it's terrible. But then once you get over it, honestly, the food noise is gone.
Okay.
Absolutely gone.
That's, I suppose, obviously I've heard loads. Jordan Peterson is gone. He's been carnivore for the last number of years. I think he had all kinds of conditions. I think his daughter's same. And I like that. There's loads of people that, on the internet. I think Joe Rogan dips in now of carnivore diet by time and intermittent fast and so on. So there is, there's actual physical evidence of the benefits of this. I still find it it's so frustrating. No, not frustrating, but it's so weird to me that the benefits of this way of life should be sang from the rooftops, yet it's not, and we're being driven towards every day you look at the TV, you've McDonald's and you've breads and all the kind of, and you were saying there, if you hadn't have gone down the road you've gone, you would have had probably better chance of winning the lotto than finding out what was actually causing some of your conditions. Because for most people trying to eliminate, if you have what would you say, in inverted commas, the normal diet now, the amount of chemicals and E numbers and all kinds of additives in your food, if you have a reaction to one of them, the chances of you trying to whittle them all back down would be next to near impossible. And it's fascinating to me how we find that this type of food is, inverted commas, normal, and yet you're here. We see you're vibrant, you're energetic. I don't want to ask your age. That's or is it?
Anthony, don't. What are you doing? Stop it.
I'm just saying. But we follow. For anyone who doesn't know, go on Kristeva's page. She's a bundle of energy and health, and yet why aren't we following this type of lifestyle instead of with all due respect, there's no vibrancy coming out of McDonald's. If I do eat it, but from time to time the kids, can we have it, and so on. You stop in and you always feel terrible after it. But yes, you'll still go back and say, maybe we'll try that one more time next year. Because it's driven. It's kind of ingrained in the psyche now.
It totally is. Well, and I don't know. So over here, because I'm on the road a lot now with my selling my meat. I go to markets and this that. So it's very hard to be like cooking my own food and that sort of thing. But I rely on, say, we have A&W here. It's like a McDonald's. It's a step up from McDonald's. They at least use Canadian grass-fed beef, or so they say. But they do a lettuce wrap. So instead of the bun, I get it in a lettuce wrap. So it's like 8 carbs instead of whatever a bun, and 40 or 50 or 75 in the bun. And honestly, you don't get that horrible feeling after. You don't get that bloated, now I want to go take a nap. So I don't know if McDonald's does that over there. And honestly, I would step up from that. Find a one that's at least a step up from.
It's last resort.
Yeah.
Have you had much?
Maybe they have you can ask for the lettuce wrap, and then at least you're feeding your children the meat and the fat without the carbs and the horrible, like those buns. Those buns will be like the Twinkie. You take one of those McDonald's buns and put it in your closet for 10 years, it'll look exactly the same.
Be like, yeah. So, I've seen they've done tests on that, haven't they? Where it kind of actually doesn't change shape or form, just stays like that for years. Mental.
And no, like mice won't touch it, ants won't touch it, rodent, so they know they're still animals are still more in touch with their ancestral biology. So they know, they have their senses out. Whereas we've lost a lot of that. So we're able to eat the bun and Twinkie and think it tastes good.
Your friends, your circle of friends, I suppose, obviously we've all grown up and we keep in touch. Obviously, we're safe going back in the day. Was there a group of friends that would have went towards the vegetarian/vegan lifestyle with you? And if so, what was their reaction to it? How was the reaction from, like, I mean, it's a pretty big transformation going from vegan to hunter gatherer style living. What's been the reaction to that?
Well, no. So, I mean, I left the Vancouver area when I was probably 19. So and then I never lived anywhere longer than 6 years. I did, 6 years on the road teaching scuba diving, and in the winter I would travel. So my friendships have largely been kept up through phone conversations and email and that sort of thing, other than meeting new people along the way. But now I'm just sort of thinking about what you just said about, the normal food, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That nobody bats an eye if you feed your kids Fruit Loops or, some sugary cereal because breakfast is the most important meal of the day, blah, blah, blah. But I say I'm carnivore and I'm only eating meat, and people are shocked and horrified. And oh my goodness, you're going to die of a heart attack, and you're probably going to have a stroke, and you're going to get kidney stones and all of that BS that we've been fed. But if I was to sit down, after dinner and have a bowl of Fruit Loops, nobody would bat an eye.
Not one jot.
It's what you're conditioned to, I think.
100%.
Yeah. And on meat, so you hunt. What's your normal quarry? Or what sustains you meat-wise? Is it from the farm? Is it hunting? What is it?
It's a combination. So deer is usually what I hunt.
Whitetail?
Whitetail and muley. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
We have both, depending on what section, like up in the northern area, whitetail's banned. You have to do whitetail because muleys, they say no up there, but south you can do muley. Then for the most part now, unfortunately, because of my Mead business, I don't have time to get out to hunt anymore. So, but I'm still, I trade with people. Eggs, so friends of mine who are still hunters and stuff, I'll trade some eggs or meat and then get elk. Elk's one of my favorites. Actually, muley's lovely too, but I like deer. I like both of them. And there's a local butcher here, so I will get one of my friends raises cows, so I split a cow with her, and the local butcher butchers it. The butcher is actually, there's 3 guys who have gotten together and they raise elk and yak. So now I can actually get access to some farmed elk. And yak, if you've never tried it, absolutely delicious. Probably next year, I won't even get a cow. I'll just get the yak as my main source of meat. And of course, here in Alberta, we have bison. And I don't mind bison. It's a super, super lean meat, though. And I just don't have any access, like in Alberta, yes, but not super locally. Like I try and really eat within, 25-mile food shed.
Yeah.
So there isn't anybody doing bison anymore in this area. So now I'm moving into the elk and yak and cow. And lamb.
Lamb. Yeah.
Freaking love. And actually, lamb is okay. I actually prefer mutton because there's more flavor to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys or your listeners know the difference between lamb and hogget and mutton.
Yeah, similar to yourself, I used to keep goats for milk, so all my kids were kind of reared on goat's milk and stuff, and we used to make ice cream and cheese and so on.
Nice.
And then every year there was a sheep farmer beside us, so he used to have, like, you'd have what we call pet lambs. So they either the mother would pass, or maybe the mother wouldn't be able to stay in two and so on. So he'd have, out of maybe 50 or 60 sheep, he could have 2 or 3 of these lambs, and we used to bring one in, and we'd rear one off one of the goats because we had an abundance of milk. So, and we'd bring it on, and as you said there, you'd bring it on into the second year for castrated for a hogget. And I used to prefer that because the lamb itself, very little meat comes off a lamb versus what you get for a hogget. You'd have, it's far more sustainable and far more, I think. I think there's a little bit more flavor to it. That's just me.
100% there is.
Yeah, but it's not given the recognition. I think it's kind of looked down a little bit as a kind of a step down from lamb. But in my opinion, I'd much prefer. That's just me, and I think you're similar in that vein.
Completely, yes. And like I say, I'll even go as far as probably mutton's my favorite.
Yeah,
because I like that little bit of extra gamey, or I wouldn't even call it gamey flavor. It's just flavorful.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think when an animal, it's all to do with, like, the longer it's active and the more kind of, because sheep are probably similar enough to go. They'll be eating different, strains of grass and leaves, and so that's all adding to it's like building. And I know this is going to go down brilliant with the vegans, but it's like building the flavor, isn't it, for you, without having to do the cooking. So yeah, but it is. It's like when you shoot a deer, each deer will taste slightly different than the next because it's been grazing on something different with different herbs and has a different, So yeah,
there was a sheep farmer in New Zealand that planted his field with herbs. So he had, because thyme grows year round, oregano grows year round. And down there, even rosemary grows year round. So he would actually put rosemary along the borders, and he actually sowed the field with some thyme and oregano, and he called it pre-seasoned meat.
Yes.
And I love that idea.
Yeah.
Very good. And when you were in New Zealand, did you get any hunting there? Talk to us a little bit more about New Zealand. I'm fascinated about the place.
It is. So New Zealand was where I was diagnosed with the low B12. So New Zealand, unfortunately, the most of my years down there, I was vegetarian and vegan. And it was only in the last year or two, maybe, that I had gone back to eating meat. And, it's funny because when the doctor told me that, I mean, instantly I thought, okay, well, this is obvious, because I was in my anthropology degree, or even into the master's at that point. And I was so learning our actual evolution and learning the actual history, and the penny was starting to drop, right? But that really was the nail on the coffin. And I thought, driving home, I thought, I can't, because my brain was still in that I don't want to eat animals. And I haven't for 6 or 7 or 8, 9 years, whatever it was at the time. I think I was between the two, I was vegan, vegetarian for nearly 12 altogether. So it's a hard shift. And I thought, what am I going to eat? And I thought, what
was the first thing that you ate? And what did it? Tuna.
Tuna. Yeah, I thought I can do a tuna sandwich. I love tuna, or I used to love tuna. But the thought of actually eating a ruminant, like a little animal or something, I wasn't there yet. But I kid you, so I bought tuna on the way home, made myself a tuna sandwich, and in half an hour, I knew I needed meat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brain fog lifted, brain fog that I didn't even know I had. Like if you had asked me on the way to the doctor's, do you have brain fog? I would have said, no, God, no, I'm fine. But within a half an hour, it was like my brain was singing out for more meat.
Yeah.
And I knew, oh my God, I need this. Then I think I stayed in the land of just eating fish for a while. And then there was an organic butcher near the university that I was going, and I bought some lamb chops for my Dowling husband, who is now an ex. And I was cooking them for him, and I was still gonna, like, I bought some fish or something for myself. And while I was cooking that lamb, honest to goodness, I nearly grew fangs. Like, I was cooking this and the smell, and anyway, so lamb was the first like red meat that I ventured into, and then I couldn't get enough of it. It was just like lamb after lamb, you know.
Fascinating how the body almost dictates. It always like I go back. I know when I get run down, you know, when coming towards the tail end of the year, when you're working and so on and so forth, and your body starts to get run down, and you kind of get that end of year cold or flu or whatever, the man flu.
Yeah.
But if you listen to it, it'll almost nearly drive you towards what you need, doesn't it? You know, and the last thing you need is a big bowl of, as we were talking about there, cereal or something. It'll drive you towards some sort of healthy nutrient food, I think, you know, if you listen closely enough.
But that's the key. And I think sadly, not only have we gotten removed from direct link to our food system, we've gotten very out of touch with our own bodies and listening. The external noise is too high, and the carb addiction is too high. And all, like I said, I did not know I had brain fog.
Yeah.
And I would have, and you know, you've seen the people arguing on the vegan page. Oh, I'm so healthy. I'm this, I'm that. Yeah, you don't know. You don't know. Just like I didn't know. I didn't know that I had brain fog. I mean, I was doing a master's degree in university. Of course, like you have to think. You have to be able to, you know, have half a brain cell working to get through a master's degree like that. So I didn't know that I had a problem until half an hour after my first tuna sandwich. Oh my gosh.
And there's a difference. I suppose that's for people who want to have a give us the name of your book again, Kristeva.
Oh, Chicken Poop for the Soul.
What a name! Brilliant.
I don't know if you can see it there.
Well, you can see it, yeah.
I will be most definitely. It's on my download list. I'm absolutely going to delve into it, because I've like that. I am going to try and transition a little bit away from my passes. As much as I love them, I will. I'm never going to say it's like you never say give them up, but definitely, I think as part of a healthier lifestyle, to get away from those kind of carbohydrate dense meals is it can't be a bad thing, you know.
Well, and especially for your children, really, like transition now, and like instead, I mean, you don't work your way towards giving them up, but just maybe make your portions, make it a side dish instead of the main event.
Yeah.
Right? Have meat and a little side of your
even that from meat eater to meat eater, even you saying that, and this will tell you how disconnected we are. You just said that just there, and automatically I kind of went, oh, meat is the main part of the dish. We've been told now for the last 20 something years, you know, drilled into the brain that the meat should be the side and not the main. Isn't it so strange? And that's from, you know, hunter to hunter, you know. It's and it's so weird. It's drilled into the brain now, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's another one of the sort of vegan lies, shall we call it? And it's not even just vegan lies, but it's even mainstream. Like, for goodness sakes, I don't know what your food pyramid looks like over there, but I presume it's the same. It's heavy on the grains and a tiny little bit of meat on the top, on the top. And really, it should be absolutely flipped.
Yeah.
Right?
Fascinating.
It should be primarily meat, and then a lot of fat, Should actually be primarily animal fat, then the protein. And then if you want to have the plant stuff, then a tiny little bit like a garnish. But the lie is, people say, oh, well, we're supposed to be like the apes. We're the same DNA as the apes, et cetera, and we don't have canine teeth and blah, blah, blah. Okay, you look at an ape, look at the size of their cecum, and their hindgut is huge. That is so that they can digest the cellulose in the plants. And P.S., have you looked at their canines? So that is not an argument. This whole, oh, humans don't have canines. Well, great apes do.
Yeah.
And they don't eat any meat. So like there's so many holes that you can poke through their arguments. Unfortunately, most of the vegan arguments are just emotional manipulation and not really based in physiology whatsoever.
Yeah.
Never mind history. What what's one of the frightening things I find is they're beginning to rewrite human evolution, and some academics are actually in that. Like it's starting to be published in so-called peer-reviewed journals and stuff, and it's frightening.
Yeah, we're living in a very, very strange time. I think for all. I think it's, and I'm not saying but conversations like this are extremely beneficial to keep people in touch with what's actually happening, rather than where they should be like following like sheep into the abyss. You're starting your own podcast as well, started?
I haven't started. Well, I shouldn't say. I did start a podcast, and it was called Ethical Agriculture, and it's still up there. But I haven't done anything with it for the past 2 years, just because with the Mead business, I'm just running flat out now, especially throughout sort of May till December every year. So I've had to drop it, but I'm wanting to get back into that because I do, like you, I feel this issue is so important to human health, the animals. Like I say, I don't want to have my money going into supporting industrial agriculture. The way we treat animals in an agricultural complex is horrifying. It's disgusting. It's tantamount to what the Nazis did to the Jews. They're basically concentration camps for animals. So, and then the naive thing that people have is this idea that you can raise food without killing anything. Well, I'm sorry, you just can't. It's as simple as that. You can't.
But one thing to survive, something has to die. That isn't it. That is just something has to. You can't be living without.
Except you put large ruminant on, like if I were king tomorrow, I would get rid of all the crops. I would let the pasture grow back, and then I would put ruminant animals on it, and I would let the trees come back. So when you put ruminant animals on pasture, they can go throughout the trees. You could regenerate the soil, and nothing needs to die in that case except the animal when we decide to harvest it. There's no collateral damage. There's no accidental killing through combine harvesting and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to displace the forest. Like even in Bella Coola, the grizzly bears don't attack the cows. So you have a system where nature and wildlife can cohabitate with what we need. In other words, large ruminant animals on pasture. You're regenerating the soil. Those cows are carbon sequestering. They're improving the soils. You're not having to use the insecticides, pesticides, fungicides. You're not having to kill and displace. So it really is the best way. And then you're giving the highest quality food to the human beings.
In your belief, then, is there enough? Is there enough? Like, because this the argument, the counter to that is, that we can feed the world with, like, I think there's 60, well, depending on which vegan page you look at, 60% or 70% less farmland. We can and save all the animals. By feeding with crops, which I would dispute anyway. Just from in my whole lifetime, I've seen the transition from the larger scale monocrop agriculture around where I grew up. It's taken more and more swathes of land, and ditches and hedgerows and all that kind of stuff are being destroyed. But do you believe it's sustainable? Like I think there's loads of farmers out there who are starting to transition now to a more what would you say, sustainable form of farming, a regenerative style of farming. Is it sustainable on a larger scale, do you think, in your opinion?
The kind of putting animals on pasture?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So this is the naive idea. So in order to have a monocrop, you need to destroy the land. You need to get rid of all the trees, all the butterflies, all the rodents, all the everything in order to put that monocrop out. And now in order to keep that free of weeds and free of pesticides or free of pests, you have to, like in the UK alone, 350,000 deer are culled every year just to protect crops.
Yeah.
So crops which are vegan, right?
Yeah.
So you have to kill, you have to poison, and then you look at not only, and then the harvesting. We all know, well, any farmer will tell you when you're using a combine and you're harvesting, you're killing things right, left, and center. Anything from rodents to baby deers, fox, etc. So and back to, we do have enough land. You look at how many crops around the world, if we put animals on it instead, you would increase the biodiversity. You would stop using the poisons, insecticides. There would be no need for fertilizer. And the offshoot of using the insecticides, pesticides, fungicides, fertilizer is you're now also poisoning waterways, our watersheds. You're killing, like the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is massive, which is the Mississippi runs down into the Gulf of Mexico. It's dead because of all of the agricultural products and all of those things, pesticides, poisons, etc., are running into it. So if you got rid of all of that and you would be able to cease using all of those products, you would back upstream have a healthier ecosystem. You wouldn't be poisoning waterways. You wouldn't be creating massive dead zones. You'd be having animals on that land that would be regenerating it through nature made it this way. There was bison on the prairies, antelope on the steppes, herds of horses and oxen in the, Mongolia area. I forget, steppes. That's how nature designed it. You have a large group of ruminant bison or whatever, followed by birds, who the birds pick through the poop and distribute it and eat the bugs and the larvae and the whatever that grow in it. It's a perfect system. Why? It's very arrogant that humans think they can do better. Yeah, I think so. In terms of what was your favorite? It's kind of a loaded question, but what was your most memorable hunt? Definitely my first moose hunt.
Okay.
Because I'd never walked through the bush with a gun before. B, I went out with Clarence. So I was up there it was a 2-week hunt. And the first few days I went up with Clarence. So at the time he was 84. And like I knew nothing. Oh my gosh, we're going along and he'd been hunting in that particular area for 44 years. And so they had marked all the territory through there. And we're talking like a vast wilderness area. And so we're going along and he put me out front. He's like, you lead. And I'm walking along and he says, just stick to the trail. Where's the trail? I couldn't see a trail. And then he says, I've got it flagged. And so he's got it flagged. And I'm thinking, okay, like orange flagging tape is going to be wrapped around trees. And so I'm standing there and I'm looking for orange flagging tape and I don't see the flag. And then he walked me up to the tree where he'd scuffed off a piece. Right? If you scuff off a piece of pine bark, the tree will leave that scar and continue to grow. It won't kill it. So then I just laughed to myself, like, oh my God, you poor city girl, you know nothing.
This is real outback living.
Yes, and so not only me, how the whole thought process of I'm looking for flagging tape, and he's, doing that. But so he also didn't know what he needed to teach me, if you get my drift. Like,
Came natural to him. This was
he didn't know what
yeah.
he did not know what he didn't know. And
Yeah.
so there was this like communication gap several times where I'm asking him about something, and you can see it's like hurting his brain because he's having to think about what I'm asking and then relive how on earth to
Yes.
teach this
I'd say there's
girl.
another man here that's going through exactly the same. Robert taught me how to hunt many years ago. I'm sure you're reliving many memories like that, Robert. Right?
I'm just smiling because it's so true. You don't know what you don't know. And you know how to do what you're doing, but to explain it to someone, you nearly take it for granted. He knows that because that's simple. Or she knows that because it's simple. But there's a huge learning curve for someone like yourself, Christina, that's only starting out.
Yes.
On that particular one, how did he do it? Was it a walk and stalk? Was it a high seat? How did he tackle that hunt with you as a new hunter?
Oh, well, we walked and stalked.
Oh,
and then another naive moment. So we're out there and we're hunting moose. So I'm looking for moose. And when you're that focused, maybe you can understand too, you're that focused, you're not thinking about other things that are out in the bush. You're just moose, 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 I'm looking for moose.
Yeah.
And anyway, we're walking along. And of course I'm out front. And then he says, "Oh, hold up, dear." And he brings me back, and a family of cougar has cut our trail. And so he's like, "Oh, look, there's a cougar's been here." And then he does this whole deconstructing. So you see him, and like now he's off in his own reverie. And then watching the way that man's mind worked. And again, the knowledge that's coming out just by looking at this track. And you can see he's like Sherlock Holmes, the hunter. So he says,
master at work.
Yeah, he says, "Oh," and then he starts looking at it. And immediately I'm like, "Cougar? Jesus Christ, I thought we were looking for moose." Like,
Get me out of here. Yeah.
He looks and he says, "Look, the track, they're headed that way, and they came from that way." And then he's analyzing. He says, "Oh, there's a bigger print. Oh, and there's two." He's like, "It's a mama and two cubs." And then he looks, and then he says, "Oh, and look, they were walking, and over here, they took off on the run. They saw us," he said. And I'm like, "Oh my God. Oh my God." Like, oh my God.
What a way for your first hunt.
This is my first hunt. And now Clarence is going that way, tracking the cougar. And I'm like nearly shitting myself. I'm like, "Oh my God, Clarence, please get back. I really don't want to see them. Like, this is enough. This is exciting enough. I might have a heart attack. Holy crap." And then I'm thinking, like, how do I wrangle you back? Because now you're going that way. There's no trail cut. I just learned 400 yards ago how to find the flagging. Like, there's no flagging out there. Like, if you have a heart attack, because he's 84, I'm like, if you have a heart attack and die, I'm going to die out here too, because I don't know how to find my way back. Yeah. Like, so this whole panic of this whole reverie inside myself was going through, thinking like, "Oh my God, I need a lasso to, get him back." And so, yeah, it was pretty, but you know what, by the end of the 2 weeks, I knew Coffee Pot Trail and I knew how to find my way back. And by that time, I was really actually quite confident in terms of, okay, I'm not going to panic if Clarence actually does get hurt, then I can find my way back to camp and so on and so forth.
Were you successful?
Pardon me?
Were you successful on the hunt? Did you actually harvest something?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what that was?
Yes, it was like the 11th hour of the last day of my hunt.
The other lad here, Anto, does that all the time. The last hour of every hunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
We like to make an entrance, Kristeva. Is that it? That's the way we do it,
Yes, totally. Well, it was crazy. So it was the last hour of that hunt. So we got it open. I think I sent you the picture of the moose all splayed out.
Yes.
So we got it open and we got the tenderloins and the heart and the liver out, and took that back to camp, and then came the next day to butcher the rest of it. But so we're out there butchering it the next day, and within 5 minutes, the brother, Ernest, got his moose. So we're out there barely just starting, and all of a sudden, boom, boom. And we're like, oh my God. So in less than 24 hours, we had 2 moose on the ground.
Wow.
And we were, because it was the first, so in Canada, up there at the time, my hunt was like October 1st to the 14th, and then his was the 15th to the 30th. And so I got mine on the 14th, he got his on the 15th, and now we've got, 4,500 pounds of animal on the ground.
So I have a 2-part question for you. What was it like looking through the scope at the moose when you were squeezing the trigger? Were you nervous? And then how, in God's name, did you get that much meat out of there?
Yeah.
So I wasn't nervous. I was excited and I guess laser focused. Like, I don't get, what do they call that when people get super excited?
The buck fever.
Yes. So I don't get buck fever. I'm actually,
Would you believe?
I'm actually very good at so the way I do it, I go up above them and then bring it down and pull the trigger, right? Just when I hit. So I don't aim and try and aim. I'm just like, okay, breathe in, exhale, boom. And that's just how I do it.
So would you believe that a lot of, I don't actually hunt with any women, but apparently the women hunters don't really suffer with buck fever. They go into a crazy focused. I won't say them all, but the high majority, where lads will normally get a bit shaky for whatever reason.
Interesting.
That's why I asked that question. I just wanted to see.
Interesting.
And then moving the meat out.
Oh, that was, for me, that's the best part. There's 2 parts of the hunting. Back to my, when I asked Clarence to teach me, I really thought I'd go once, learn how to do it, tick that box. Okay, I can if I have to, and then never do it again. But the depth of knowledge and what he taught me, it was like going into a whole new realm of the world that I didn't count on enjoying. So we'd be walking along and then he'd show me some browse that had been nibbled off. Oh, look at this, my dude. This is what the moose have been eating. And then here's some poop. And here, do you know what track this is? And they're little teeny tiny things. So I now know how to track mice, voles, fox, coyote, bear, grizzly bear versus that, and then seeing what they're eating. And so when you go out in the winter here, of course, there's snow. So you get to see this whole other realm of who's out there. And you understand, oh my gosh, there's all of these other critters out here. And you see, and you learn so much about okay, so the moose eat the willow and the deer eat this, and then you look through their poops. So, oh, this has been eating this. Like I found, so and you learn the difference between cougar scat and bear scat, and how the little tail on a cougar, it has this little hook on it. And you can tell it looks more human than the bear in a way.
Okay.
And one of the really coolest things I ever found in cougar scat is the front 2 little toes of a baby deer.
Oh.
In the cougar scat.
Wow.
So I like going out there even just to see the story of who's out there, what they're eating, where they're bedding down.
It's that ancestral link, isn't it? It's the link back to, that's how we would have survived back.
Yes.
You had to know. You had to know, was there a predator tracking you, or was it in front of you? Was your next meal how far ahead? So there's what you're describing there. That's the link between us and our ancestors. That's how they did it, And similar to you, I find that all the time. It's fascinating to me how they did. Like, we have technological advances now that help and guide us and so on and so forth. But when we're out there and you're looking at that, that's the same way they did it. What you're looking at is the same thing they looked at, and how you deciphered that was the same way they deciphered it, and I think that's really cool. It's really cool.
Well, and so to continue on the story of the butchering piece. So the other thing about Clarence and his sons, they're like, when I told my brother that I was going to go hunting, he's like, oh, you should buy yourself a Sawzall. And I thought, there is no way that Clarence is going to let me take a Sawzall out there. Like, no, there's no power tools involved. So he and I think, I don't remember if I sent the picture or not, but I have a beautiful picture of Clarence with his little folding jackknife, and it's like a made in China, little teeny tiny. We butchered that whole moose with him with that, and me with another one. Mine was a tiny bit bigger, but not very much bigger. And the only thing, like the way we cut through the breastplate, was with my gerber saw. So it's all done by hand. And I mean, absolute minimalist, cut it out. And I'll tell you what, like that, just the first day going back to camp I had the heart and tenderloin in my backpack, and the thing probably weighed 50 pounds just between those two pieces of meat. And okay, so little known fact, it takes 13 pillowcases to take out that whole moose. So
see, that scale, we're not used to that scale.
We're not used to that at all, no.
So
and that's everything deboned. Like, so we left that whole carcass. We didn't take any of the bones, nothing. We deboned it in the field. And so the neck takes one pillowcase, either side, slapped together, put into a pillowcase. And then the same, like each thigh, you cut it off and they fit into a pillowcase each, and so on and so forth. So 13 pillowcases. Wow. You take out a whole moose.
We think we drag that, Robert, would we?
No, we'll cut that up.
We try for about 10 seconds, I think. That is one serious animal. They're huge. As Robert said, we don't have that scale over here. You're blessed to have that kind of game on your doorstep.
Blessed and cursed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But I think another piece of this, going back to the human history and so forth, and the vegan argument, we have become so far removed and so-called civilized, quote unquote, that we've forgotten we are an animal of the forest. That's from whence we come. When you look back into human history, we're an animal of the forest, or the Serengeti, or the plains, or the steppes, but we're meant to be on this earth and harvesting from the earth. And we're an apex predator. It's that simple. And when people, like when you look at, so they took the wolves out of the Yellowstone, and it completely changed the ecology. And then the deer became overrun. And then the native grass disappeared, and so on and so forth. Like, it totally changed the ecosystem. Then they threw those wolves back in. They kept the deer in place. And now a bunch of the native species of grasses and flowers and trees are coming back.
Yeah.
Because you've put what Mother Nature had there in place. Like, Mother Nature is perfect. They put that in place, and that's coming back. We humans, we've removed ourselves as part of that ecosystem. We're supposed to be part of that ecosystem. We're supposed to be competing with, like in North America, competing with wolves to keep the ruminant, the pressure from the deer and the elk and the moose down. And we've forgotten that. So you remove that, and all of a sudden you have this massive imbalance in nature again. So then, and now it cycles, right? The deer population goes up, the wolf population lags, then the wolves start coming up because the deer's high, then that pressure becomes low and the deer start disappearing, and then the wolf, and it just cycles like that. But we humans are supposed to be out there harvesting and being part of that natural system.
I think a big part of that as well, though, like, because we have that in here where there's talk of reintroduction of certain animals and so on, and wolves being one of them, and I think the lynx being another one, and so on. And we have done reintroduction of some of our kind of prey birds and so on. The problem with it is it's sprung on people. So these conversations are not had before this is done. So what happens is there's a reintroduction, and there's a disconnect between the people who are reintroducing or trying to do what they're trying to do, and the people who are just going about their business. So there's an educational aspect that needs to be done, because otherwise what happens is you get this conflict, and one doesn't get along with the other. Whereas if you have a farmer, for argument's sake, and you're saying to him, "Oh, we're reintroducing wolves here," and he has his sheep, but he's going to be terrified. So there has to be an education. There has to be a common ground, and obviously then there has to be boundaries put in place for both the wolf to live and humans and farmers to earn a living until we get to that happy medium, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and again, like even from my experience in Bella Coola, you're never going to introduce grizzly bears over there because they were never part of your ecosystem. But the idea of wolves is a good one. But there needs to be not only educating the public, as you say, but and then help for the farmers so that when and if they do lose things, there is compensation until you get the system put together so that it can balance. But you touched on something there that I've thought through for years, and I think is so important. Our human arrogance to think that we should be able to go wherever we want. If you want to have natural ecosystems, we need to stay the hell out of those areas.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be our right to go everywhere and then expect to not have conflict. Like I shouldn't be allowed to just go off into everywhere in the bush. If we want to save the grizzly bears and the black bears, we need to, like you say, delineate some habitat that we don't
leave untouched.
No, because then what happens is I go in there, then a bear kills me or my dog or whatever, and then we go and shoot the bear, and then, you can't have everything. Life is a compromise. So we have to decide if we want to reintroduce wolves over there and change your habitat and bring back the native fauna and flora and all that, then we need to create a space for that to happen where there is less conflict.
And I think your book and your impending podcast will do much to encourage that conversation. And we urge people, as I say, if you haven't already, go over and have a little peep at Kristeva. Your Stolen Harvest is the name of your Instagram handle, I think.
Stolen Harvest. Yep. Stolen Harvest is my Mead company. I also have Modern Stone Age Wellness. That's the carnivore branch of my life.
Yes. For people who haven't already, check it out. It's really cool. It's ultra informative. I can't wait. We're going to try and get some of your mead over here to have a little sample on the podcast.
Before we let you go, I have two things. Put you on the spot, Kristeva. If you were sitting down to have a glass of mead now, which one would you go for?
Is this before dinner, during dinner, or after?
After. Before dinner.
Okay.
Doesn't bother Robert.
So before dinner will probably be my wild rose petal. During dinner, depending on if it's game meat, then it would be Saskatoon. And after dinner, the mocha boucher. So the boucher means this is another meat. So the boucher means I've caramelized the honey prior to fermentation. It completely changes the flavor profile. And so the same way that the Maillard reaction, when you cook sugar to make caramel or toffee, that same thing happens with honey. So I cook it and caramelize it and I taste it and when I get the flavor that I like and the color that I like, I stop and then I proceed with fermentation. So that's my after dinner sipper, and I put it in a brandy snifter and I feel important.
Right. So that was the first part of my question. And then the next thing is more, we're trying to inform you. When you hung around in New Zealand with Tony the Greek, Tony's a drug dealer. Tony the Greek is a drug dealer's name, Kristeva.
Is it seriously?
No, I'm only messing. It just sounds, when you said it there, I was like, that's a good name for a drug dealer. Thanks so much, Kristeva.
That's brilliant. I think what you were saying there, I was just listening to that. There's we've alcohol that sounds like a dessert, and it's good for you. Like, do you know what I mean? You're ticking all the boxes. Well,
so just one more plug on that. It really is probably the healthiest alcohol you'll ever drink. So when I make it, except for the boucher, the honey stays raw throughout the fermentation process. All of the ingredients that I use, like the wild rose petal, they're hand-picked wild rose petals from Alberta. The fruit that's in it, the Saskatoon, I work with producers who don't spray. And so the fruit and the juice from the fruit stays raw throughout the fermentation process as well. So and the antioxidants in the Saskatoon berry alone is just out of this world. So yeah, it really is.
We're going to check it out.
Maybe that's what we should do, like dandelion, rose petal, Saskatoon, or berries borealis, and the mocha boucher.
Brilliant, fascinating. I'm going to have a peep at your book. I'll be letting people know over the next couple of episodes how I get on with that. I'm looking for so chicken. Just remind us, chicken poop.
Chicken poop for the soul. You can find it on Amazon. If you don't like Amazon, you can go straight to the publisher, which is called Caitlin Press, Caitlin Press.
Brilliant. Kristeva, It's been an honor having you on. It's been fascinating. I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions, and it's going to get the conversation flowing. I'm pretty sure. I know about that. So, from myself and Robert, thanks a million for taking the time.
Thanks, Kristeva.
Yeah, you're welcome. Nice to meet you both.
The very, very same to yourself. Over now, Kristeva. Talk to you soon.
Okay. See ya.